And the name of your brand, where does that name come from?
It's who I am. My mom's name was Carol, and I am Carol's daughter. I wrote a list of things I was and things I wanted to become. And one of the things that I was Carol's daughter. And then also when I used to give the products away as a gift, people would say, "Oh, you smell good. What is that?" "Oh, that's stuff that Carol's daughter makes." Literally, Carol's daughter made it.
How did your mom feel? Hello, everyone, and welcome to Dream Leapers. I'm your host, Harriette Cole, and I have a very special guest today, someone I have known, I think, since she started her business 30 plus years ago. We are honored to welcome a visionary who literally turned a dream into an empire. Lisa Price is the trailblazing founder of Carol's Daughter. What began in her Brooklyn kitchen, mixing oils, fragrances, and a whole lot of love, grew into a pioneering beauty brand that transformed how the world celebrates natural hair and self-care. Through her creativity, authenticity, and commitment to community, Lisa built Carol's Daughter into a multi-million-dollar company that caught the attention of global powerhouse L'Oreal, which acquired the brand in 2014. Under her leadership, Carol's Daughter became more than a business. It became a cultural touchstone, uplifting generations of women to embrace their natural beauty and their roots, literally and figuratively. Well, recently, Lisa Price has a new relationship with her company, and she's going to talk to us about that. She's going to talk to us about the lessons she's learned on her entrepreneurial journey, how she continues to innovate and inspire, and what it truly means to build something from the heart that stands the test of time. Please join me in welcoming Lisa Price. Hello, my dear.
Hi, thank you so much. That was so beautiful.
Oh, I remember those. I mean, it's wonderful when you have longevity, right?
Yes.
I remember you telling the story about stirring up those potions in your house. And, a lot of people have the dream that they want to have a business. Many people want to make things that are for the body, for the hair, that soothe our spirit. But it's one thing to want to do it, and another thing to make it happen and even scale it. Can you tell us about the dream? Like, do you remember when this idea came to you that you wanted to have these products?
I didn't think of it when I first started as this is my dream and this is what I want to do. I was enjoying it as a hobby. And my mother said, "You should sell at the church flea market that's coming up in 2 weeks. I think you would do well." And I was kind of like, really? And my mother wasn't the type of person that suggested every little thing to you. She was encouraging. She didn't block you from doing things, but it was an odd thing for her to say. And so I paid attention to it and I said, "Okay, I'll do that." And it was that interaction with people on a Saturday where I took the creams out, not really knowing what would happen. I just thought worst case scenario, I'll have a nice Saturday in Brooklyn. It was beautiful weather. It was the end of May. And I sold every jar that I brought out there with me. And somebody handed me a flyer for a flea market that was coming up in a couple of weeks. And I wasn't doing anything that Saturday. So I did another flea market. And then I just kept doing that entire summer.
Now,
So
what were the products? What were the creams that you had that first time?
I was selling one of my body butters at the time. I called it Fragrant Moisture Butter. And I had a baby powder scent. I had a hyacinth scent. I had a rose and mango scent. And throughout that summer, I started to add fragrance oils with the body butters. And then I started to add bath salts towards the end of the summer. People would ask for things and I would go home and experiment and try to make it.
And just I'm thinking about this process. So you're making these butters, like when in your house, like when did you just say, I'm gonna do this thing, I'm gonna stir up these things? That, that's not everybody doesn't do that. So like
Yeah.
what happened?
I had very dry skin always. And initially, I started making fragrances because I've been in love with perfume for as long as I can remember. My earliest memories of being just enamored with perfume go back to like age 5. And so I had started to make my own fragrances from fragrance oils that I would buy at a local Arab shop where I lived. And I learned that the way that a scent lasts on you is you layer it. You have a lotion, you have a shower gel, a powder. So I needed to scent things with these oils I was making. And I tried buying lotions from the store, from the drugstore, and then buying like travel containers and like shaking up my fragrance with an unscented lotion. And it wasn't really working out too well. So then I thought maybe I could make lotion. And I remember I had a bottle of a popular lotion, Creme de Corps by Kiehl's.
Mhm.
And I read the ingredients that I could pronounce and then
Right.
thought, okay, what if I got those things? Like, how would I make a lotion? And I didn't know what I was doing and I didn't know where to start. But I just thought, I just like made this list of different oils and butters. And I was out on a Sunday in Park Slope, went into an alternative bookstore and got a book on aromatherapy. And inside of that book were some basic recipes for salves and balms and creams and massage oils. So it gave me a base with which to start. And then I started building on it. Like, well, what happens if I put aloe vera in it? Well, what happens if I don't put the lanolin, but I put shea butter? And I just experimented like you would with food recipes, just
Mhm.
swapping things out and seeing what would happen. So it was really more for fun at first and very personal. Like I wanted to make something for myself because I always had dry skin. And after 2 or 3 years, I finally made a moisturizer that didn't curdle or,
Right.
turn into mess. It was something that could actually be used.
So 2 or 3 years, that means you were really sticking to it, but you bring up that point of what happens, especially because you were using natural ingredients. I
Hmm.
think, isn't it true that some of the additives can keep, the products from curdling, but you didn't wanna do that?
Well, I didn't know how to use them. So at that
Uh,
time, there was nothing called natural beauty.
mm.
So there was no aversion to the ingredients. I just didn't know what they were. And I'm cooking in an apartment in Brooklyn. Like I didn't want explosions.
Understood. And so what year are we talking about? When did you start?
I started as a hobby in late 80s, early 90s.
Mhm.
And so I started to make fragrances late 80s, early 90s, products in like 1990, 1991. But by 93 is when I started to sell.
Great. And the name of your brand, where does that name come from?
It's who I am. My mom's name was Carol, and I am Carol's daughter. I wrote a list of things I was and things I wanted to become. And one of the things that I was Carol's daughter. And then also, when I used to give the products away as a gift, people would say, "Oh, you smell good. What is that?" "Oh, that's stuff that Carol's daughter makes." Literally, Carol's daughter made it.
How did your mom feel when you named your brand after her?
she she used to joke with me all the time, like if I was doing an event, an expo or something like that, she would say, "So how did things go today?" And I said, "Oh, they went okay." She said, "You make enough money for me to sue you yet? Because you're using my name. I didn't sign anything." you know
I love it.
And then when I went on Oprah, she had to go to the clinic like the week after the show aired. And she called me and she said, "You could keep doing TV." And I said, "Why?" She said, "Girl, I didn't wait online for nothing. They took me right in for my blood work." The doctor saw me right away. She said, "I got red carpet treatment. Keep doing TV."
I'm a celebrity now. Well, let's talk about that, doing Oprah, because, especially when Oprah had her show on network television, it was a game changer when people, uh, came on the show. She
Mhm.
really any kind of anointing from Oprah Winfrey would change people's trajectory. What happened for you?
It was actually perfection for me, honestly, because I had so many people tell me that everything was going to change overnight. You're going to get flooded with orders. You're not going to be able to fill the
Mm,
orders. You should be prepared. You should make 20,000 of this and 10,000 of that. And I had never done anything like that before. And at the time, I said, no, I'm not going to do that, because that's spending money that I don't have.
mhm.
And whatever orders come in, we'll deal with it when they come in. And I'm so grateful that I did that, because the type of show that I was on was a show about women who had started businesses in their homes, and their businesses were making over $1 million. So it was a collective message. There
Mm,
were different businesses, different people. So it wasn't quite the same as having all of the attention focused on you.
yes.
So I got a lot of traffic to my website, to the point where it crashed. I did get a lot of orders, but we could manage them. And I didn't invest in anything ahead of time, so I didn't lose anything. And it was as if I had gotten a seal of approval from somewhere. So it was the show, and then it was People Magazine saw the show, so let's do a feature on her 3 months later. And then the show re-aired 6 months later, and I got another little hit. And then I moved into the holidays with the People Magazine article. So it was a beautiful cascade of events that just kept escalating throughout the entire back half of that year. So it was a manageable shift, and not seismic, to the point where we would have been crippled.
I think it was smart of you to make that decision, and probably a tricky decision to make, because you wanna be able to fulfill orders, obviously,
Right.
but there is no guarantee what's gonna happen. So it made a bump, but it made a manageable bump in your business.
Definite. And it was something, I always refer to it as the gift that kept on giving, because years later, when she was leaving and ending her show, I ended up in 3 specials about the Oprah effect. 3 different networks, 3 different specials. I took all the free press I could.
I
I
bet you did.
it's like, sure.
So you started your brand with body products, is that right?
Yes.
And what were those products in the beginning, and then, how did you expand?
I started out with the fragrant moisture butter.
Mhm.
I also had what I would refer to as body and bath oils, because my oil could be used for massage, for moisturization, but also to perfume your bath water. I started to make products, well, sell products in May of 93. And I was experimenting with hair by the end of the summer, because every time I went out to sell, women were asking for hair products, and I didn't have any at the time. So I was experimenting on myself, my family. I had friends who were stylists. So by the end of 93 into early 94, I started to have Mimosa Hair Honey, which we still sell today. Healthy hair butter. We don't sell that. That's the product that is in the Smithsonian. Um, I had bath salts. I had shower gels, herbal rinses for the hair, already made that you could pour onto your hair, but then also jars of herbs and flowers where you could make your own
Yes.
tonic for your hair. I made foot products, hand cream, anything that I dreamt of, thought of, somebody asked me for. I said, okay, I'll try it. I'll make it.
And how long were you making products in your home?
We made products here for 10 years. So 2003, I started to produce. Actually, when I shot the Oprah show in 2003, I was still making products here. And about a month after it aired, we had moved into our warehouse, and I was making products in a kitchen in a warehouse. So a larger, more efficient kitchen. And then by 2004, 2005, we started to shift to contract manufacturing.
How many people were part of your team in the early years?
Very early, it was a hodgepodge of whose teenager could come and work after school, when they were on Christmas break, what kid needed a job somewhere. Um, but it grew when I officially had a staff. It started at about 10. And I think the largest staff I ever had, including our retail stores, when we had different stores across the country, was about 80 people.
So you kept it pretty tight.
Yes, yes.
Mhm. Hey guys, this is Dream Leapers with Harriette Cole. We are talking with Lisa Price, the creator of Carol's Daughter, having fun going down memory lane in particular. So when you mentioned the stores, I remember the beautiful store you had on 125th Street. When did you open that store, and tell us about the retail experience?
The store in Harlem opened in September of 2005. We had a store in Brooklyn and Fort Greene prior to that. There was a store on in Fort Greene on DeKalb Avenue and South Elliott, which at one point had been Spike Lee's joint, and he
Right.
would sell paraphernalia from his films there. And then that was empty for a while, and then I was the next retailer to occupy that space. But the store in Harlem was the vision of Carol's Daughter, for lack of a better term, elevated, really coming into her own. We had business partners at that time. Steve Stout was a business partner, Will Smith, Jay-Z, Jada Pinkett Smith. So the opening of that store was the announcement of this new Carol's Daughter, that was ready for expansion, ready for new things in retail. And it was a really, really beautiful flagship store. That we spent way too much money on making it look like that, but we didn't know at the time. But it was a beautiful, beautiful place, really was.
I remember that, and also I remember those partnerships, which just for context, this was at a time when hip hop had grown up. Like hip hop had on business suits, right?
Yes, yes.
And many of the artists and executives from the world of hip hop, which had an international impact, had matured and were venturing out into other businesses. This was at around that time when you
Mhm.
worked with them. What was it like being in that world?
It was so amazing to me because, Will and Jada, for example, these were people that I looked up to, even though technically I was older than they were. Um, she was Lena on a different world, and he was this box office phenom. And it was so humbling to me that they wanted to work with me and work with my brand to the point where they invested money into it. Jay-Z was not someone whose music at the time I really knew, because at the time I had two toddlers at home. So, I was listening to radio edits.
Yeah.
iPods were not a thing yet. You couldn't control music sometimes. So
Sure.
there was a lot about Jay that I didn't know. And I learned about him when we, became business partners, and I really dove into his music. And I always refer to it as learning the magic of his poetry.
Yes.
But it was an amazing time for me. It was very humbling to work with people like that. And then in retrospect, having so much gratitude for the position that they took, because they could have been hyper involved and nitpicky and all of these things. And they were very much in the background, gave opinions when asked, spoke to press when asked, but really didn't interfere with what was going on. And to have had no experience in that world, I didn't know what to expect. But
Right.
then years and years later, when you see how different it can be with different people, I was like, oh, yeah, I was really blessed with those guys.
How long were you in business with them?
They invested in Carol's daughter in 2005, and we sold to L'Oreal in 2014, and that's when everyone exited.
So that was a long relationship.
9 years, yeah.
Okay. During that time, another highlight I remember was with Disney. Remember
Yes.
there was Princess, was it Princess
Princess
Tia?
and the Frog, yes.
Princess and the Frog, and you made a beautiful collection of hair products for children. Tell us
Yes.
about that.
That was so great. The most interesting thing about the Disney thing for me, my team went to the meeting, the people in marketing, they went to the meeting, and they thought that they were going to the meeting to pitch to Disney why Carol's daughter would be a great fit for this movie. And Disney was pitching to us, like,
Ah, I love it.
can you, we're hoping that you can do it. You know, what do we have to do to work with you? Because they knew that we were a small independent brand and they knew they were expensive.
Mm-hmm.
So it was just working all of that out, figuring out the licensing, figuring out how to do the testing on the products, and just making sure that we could manage it all within our budget. So it was daunting, and it was scary, but it was such a beautiful experience. And then to be able to go back and work with them again, it was just remarkable.
What was the relationship like? I think for a lot of people in business, thinking about being a small business and then working with this giant global entity whose brand everybody knows, what was the relationship like working with them?
It was a good one. I mean, we had good people on the team on the Disney side. Jan
Mm.
Coleman was a point person for us, and she's just a phenomenal person and is still with Disney today. And it's the type of relationship where it's very important to be transparent. So we were always very transparent about what we could do and what we couldn't do, and they in turn were transparent about how to work around certain things, and like, okay, we can't work around that, so we're not going to do that. um, it enabled us to also get some added distribution in some of the retailers that we were with. So Dillard's had a special Princess and the Frog display. They had Princess Tiana cutouts in the store. um, it was less of a huge moneymaker and more of awareness. This
Mm.
was before social media was how everybody found out who you were. And so people were spending lots of money on advertising dollars in magazines and on commercials, which was a budget that we didn't have. So we used our marketing efforts and our partnerships to be the bullhorn for the brand, if you will. And that was an amazing one. So not so much a big money maker, but it was a big awareness booster.
I'm glad you brought that up. I mean, there are many people, probably people tuned in right now, who don't have a clue what it was like before social media,
I
and
know.
it was not that long ago. We end up feeling like we're old just because technology has just gone exploded over a short period of time. But for a long time, up until
Mhm.
recent years, it was advertising. It was, commercials, print ads in magazines. We hardly even have magazines anymore, and as you say, word of mouth. But to get the word out, and that goes back to when I think about when you started your business. There still are so many people who are making products at home, selling
Mhm.
on at the festivals, the street festivals, selling on the corner at 125th Street, wherever people do in their neighborhoods all over the country. To get to this level is difficult to
Yeah.
happen, even when you are incredibly talented, and certainly before social media. So the Disney collab was incredible. Did you do any other collabs with other businesses?
We collaborated with Mary J. Blige. So my business partner was Steve Stout at that time, and Steve was working with Mary on her career. and he had this idea of her working with us. And Mary had heard about Carol's daughter. She was actually on a beach on vacation somewhere. Someone was rubbing something on their skin. She said, "Oh, girl, your skin looks so beautiful. What is that you're using?" And it was one of my products. And that was the first time that she heard about Carol's daughter. So when Steve mentioned it to her, she was like, "Wait a second. So and so was on the beach with her stuff. Yes, I want to meet her." So I got to collaborate with Mary, where she promoted the brand and was a spokesbeauty for us. But then when she wanted to launch a fine fragrance, we worked on that together. And it was Carol's daughter presents Mary J. Blige's My Life. And that was remarkable for me, because she's Mary J. Blige, but then also all of what I've done started with my love for fragrance. So to work with someone to develop their own fine fragrance, it's one of the highlights of my career.
I remember you're working with Mary, and I think she'd had ideas over time for creating products, but she hadn't done it. And
Mm-hmm.
so I'm guessing she really trusted you too, because it takes a lot to work with someone to cultivate, especially a fragrance that's so intimate, and to be
Mm-hmm.
able to figure that out was very special.
Absolutely. It was.
So you said it was 2014 when when L'Oreal bought the company.
Mm-hmm.
How did that come about?
In 2013, Carol's daughter was in a good position to take ourselves out for sale. So what a lot of I guess customers didn't understand about the brand, we had the initial investors that came into the company, Steve, and then he brought in Will and Jada and Jay-Z and a few other people. And then we took equity partners in 2007. So when your equity partners come in, they're coming in with a large amount of money, and their goal is to help double, triple, quadruple, whatever your business is at the time, so that you can sell for a high multiple. And their goal is to get back what they put in and then some. The
Mhm.
challenge that we had is we closed a deal at the end of 2007 and then went into a recession. So there was a slow start, if you will. And we were looking initially at a 3 to 5 year turnaround and then go out for sale. And 3 to 5 years turned into about 6 to 7 years. And so we decided in 2013 that the finances looked right. You could tell a good story. A lot of people think that a company like L'Oreal or Lauder or P&G buys something when it's feeble and then they fix it up and make it better. But no, they want to buy something that's running well, that's profitable, that has some runway, that has room for growth. And we felt in 2013 that that's what we looked like. So hired a bank, they put together the package, they take you out to meet with different companies. And I loved a couple of the companies that we met with, but L'Oreal felt like the right one. There were these little like clues. You'd get that little feeling in your stomach, the little goosebumps. People would say things in the meetings that were like, "Oh, they understand us. They understand our consumer. They get it." And so we had initial conversations, and then they kind of stepped away. They needed time to think. They wanted to see what we were going to do next. They watched what we did next. They thought that it was great. And they came back in 2014 and said, "Okay, let's talk again." So we first spoke in 2013, and then they stepped away for about 5 to 6 months just to see what would happen. And when they came back, they were ready and we were ready, and we did a deal.
So I remember being excited for you that this opportunity came. And I also remember, Lisa, a lot of people weren't. They were mad. People were mad at
Oh,
you. How could
yeah.
you sell out to the man? That was the chant that I heard so often. And not
Mhm.
just for your business, but other Black-owned businesses that have sold to large companies. And I
Yeah.
think in part it is people not understanding what it means to build a business and grow a business. How did you handle that?
It was a difficult thing to handle, and unfortunately it was a difficult thing to handle multiple times, because that rhetoric, would rear its head every few years over and over again. But what I learned from it, which helped me to deal with it, was we didn't have experience. And when I say we as a people didn't have experience in this space of business ownership. I
Mhm.
would watch white entrepreneurs get investments from companies and they would get cheered. They would get acquisitions from other companies, they would get cheered. We get acquired by someone else, we get boos and hisses and feelings of betrayal. But I understand it, because what is our history? They've stolen from us, they appropriate our culture, we don't usually get our fair share. So of course that's going to be the assumption. But I also understood that my role has been to be a leader, in that I was one of the first ones to walk down a certain path. It
Mhm.
doesn't mean that I have it all figured out. It doesn't mean I'm not going to make mistakes. It doesn't mean that I'm the best at what I'm doing. I just got picked to be the first. So my job as the first is to get through as best as possible, do the best that I can, because if I screw up, the door is going to shut behind me and somebody else is not going to be able to come behind me and do even better than me. And I think I did a good job leaving the door open. And there have been others that have come after me, and the deals get better and better, and the backlash gets smaller and smaller. And that's how it's going to change. There has to be more acquisitions and more of these types of deals for people to see, oh, this is the ecosystem of business. This is okay.
Mhm.
It's going to be uncomfortable as we learn it, but then once we learn it, it will be okay. And I just had to be one of the first to do it. So it was hard.
Understood. Hey guys, this is Dream Leapers with Harriette Cole. We are talking with Lisa Price of Carol's Daughter, getting a business lesson right now about, what she has had to do and dealing with the public, and how some in the public have had, I would say, a misunderstanding, but I'm glad to know that you withstood that, because it was intense. I remember it was
Yeah.
it was it was intense. Now, another thing that happened, which doesn't always happen when a company is acquired, you stayed with the company. You didn't just sell the business and go off and,
No.
go to the beach for the rest of your life. You you stayed with the business. How common or uncommon is that?
I have learned that it is not very common.
That's what I thought.
I know of myself. I was there for 10 years. Wendy Zomer, who founded Urban Decay, I believe she was at L'Oreal for maybe 7 or 8 before she left. Um, Bobby Brown may be the longest of all of us. Lauder purchased Bobby's company, and Bobby was there for 22 years, I believe.
Wow.
So she breaks the record for all of us, but it is not common. But I knew that that was something that I needed to do. I knew it was important for me to be there. And I'm very grateful for the time that I spent at L'Oreal. I learned a lot. I learned about big companies. I learned the difference between big companies and small companies. I learned more about marketing. I learned more about the science of what I was doing. Working with the labs was phenomenal. But I also learned what doesn't really work for me as a person. I understood the process. I understood the need for the process, but I wasn't necessarily comfortable working within the process. I'm not a corporate person.
Mm. So could you take us into that a little bit to get a sense of what you mean?
Well, when you're in a large corporation, it usually means that there's targets that are on that corporation. it is possible for different companies to get sued for different things. And because they're so large, lawyers will take things on pro bono. They'll take a shot at it because if they win, it could be really big. And so because of that exposure, and then that exposure lends itself to some fragility, there's a lot of process to protect the brand, the company, the products, etc. So you're developing 2 years out. There's lots and lots of testing. There's so much ideation and meetings to decide what the direction is going to be. And I always felt like I needed a crystal ball. You know, it's like, how do I know in 2014 what somebody's going to want to buy in 2016? Everything can change. And, you know, so that was really hard to try to see ahead and hope that someone didn't copy your idea while you were in the middle of it. You know, hope that it passes all of the testing and everything. But I think one of the hardest things for me outside of that was having so many meetings. It took a long time for me to get used to meeting. Like, I remember my first few weeks there, I said to somebody, I said, didn't we talk about this last week? You know, I was so confused, and they were like, yeah, we're going to probably talk about it 5 or 6 times. This is like rehearsal for the big meeting. I was like, because when you're independent, you don't have time to talk that much.
You don't. And you don't have that many people to talk to.
Exactly. Like
decisions.
It's Thursday, right? We're all good. You know?
And so there was a lot of pressure on you as well, just being able to navigate in a completely different culture.
Yeah.
And what about, now the company owns Carol's Daughter. How much power did you have while now being under this company?
You know, technically, they could have done whatever they wanted to do, and they didn't have to ask my permission for anything, right? That's the broad strokes of it and what it means when you are acquired by someone else. But L'Oreal didn't operate that way because I was there at their request. I was an employee there. I was, you know, I had a contract, so my opinion meant something. My connection to the brand and to the innovation that we were putting out meant something, because they understood that the consumer was connected to me and to my voice. And so if I didn't agree with a path we were going down, I could express that and always felt comfortable being able to do that. Now, there were a couple of occasions where we disagreed, and they said, well, we really feel like this is what we need to do. We respect your position, but we've got to do it this way, and we hope that you can be comfortable with it. And, you know, I wasn't always comfortable, but I had been given respect and allowed to express my opinion and go in my direction. I had to do the same when they didn't necessarily agree with me. So I never felt that I wasn't being seen or heard. I never felt bulldozed. And it felt fair, because I got to say many times, please don't do that. And they would say, okay.
And so how did the business grow after being under L'Oreal? Were you very quickly in more doors, expanded product line? What happened?
Yeah, we were very quickly in more doors. We eventually let go of our retail stores. At the point of acquisition, I didn't have as many as I initially started with. And some people thought that that shift was because of them. But it was more that people's shopping habits had drastically changed. We were not in physical stores in the same way. And if we were, we wanted to go to one place and get a bunch of stuff. So when the distribution expanded and we were in Target and in Walmart and in CVS, we didn't need as many freestanding stores
Right.
because she was shopping elsewhere and getting what she needed. So yeah, there was a big shift in where you could find us. But then there was also a shift in the perception of that. Some people thought it was good, some people thought it was bad. I thought it was good because it was very, very hard managing those different locations, and retail spaces had become, for brands like us, they needed to become more experiential, places where people came to take pictures for social, not necessarily. So they became like marketing tools. And for us, it just didn't make sense to have 4 stores as marketing tools.
Understood. And you bring up what we mentioned earlier, just the advent of social media and how it has impacted everyone.
Hmm.
How did social media impact your business?
It was amazing for us initially because we were a company that had a sticky audience. We had built our audience organically because when we joined social media, it wasn't pay to play at the time. And so we couldn't afford, when we were independent, to do market research. So we would just go on Facebook and ask the question, hey, if we did this, would you buy it? And because the algorithm worked in your favor, then you got to your people. If you had 792,000 followers, you got to a lot of them when you asked that question without having to write checks. And so it was very, very helpful to have that dialogue back and forth with the consumer. Today, it's just the price of entry. I am slowly learning how to create content. I have a wonderful social media manager now who just, gets me lip syncing and doing different things and playing around. But we all have to be content creators now. We can't
It's
just
true.
be entrepreneurs.
Yeah.
That ship has sailed, unfortunately.
It's a new day.
It is. It really is.
But this year, ownership changed with
Yeah.
your company. What happened?
I was able to reacquire the brand along with a business partner, and we announced that in March, and I am independent. And ever since March,
Woo-hoo.
I've been transitioning out of the L'Oreal system, um, and it's been scary and fun and daunting and all the things, but mostly all good.
How were you able to convince them to extricate?
It really wasn't me convincing them, and it wasn't even them convincing me. It was very interesting. I feel like they were having conversations on their own that I didn't know about. And I was having conversations on my own and at home and with my therapist, with my husband, what's next. And the conversations converged and came together, and they had put a lot of thought into it, and they were thinking maybe we're not the right stewards for this brand because we haven't been able to do with it what we thought we could.
Mm.
It was okay, but it just wasn't like taking off the way that they expected it to. And so they were more concerned with, for lack of a better term, not wanting to break the brand, if you will,
Mhm.
and wanted to know if I was open to reacquisition and taking charge of it again. But we can help find someone to help you do it if you want to
Great.
do that, or you can go out and raise money and put a team together. So it was very collaborative, and it was very like, let's see if we can make this happen.
That's great.
Yeah, no, my relationship with L'Oreal has been really great. People think otherwise, and they don't know, but it was definitely a part of the story that had to be lived in this way because it's how I ended up here.
What's fascinating is what sounds like a really profound level of respect that has been with you throughout the process. And again, when you pointed out being the first to do something and you have the learning experience and then get to tell about it. I think I often say endings are more important than beginnings because
Mm,
people don't usually behave well at the end of things, and
yeah.
then all kinds of hell breaks loose. But in this case, what a lovely way to for the relationship to change.
It has been remarkable. Like I've been reflecting a lot on it because the conversations began last November.
Mm.
So as I sit in my world this November, I've been reflecting on what November 2024 was. And it was an amazing conversation when it started in November 2024. It is definitely one of the calmest business deals I have ever done. I was not stressed at all.
Beautiful.
It was so transparent, above board. And I guess because I have so much experience as well, I knew who to call to get advice. I knew um, what I needed and what I wanted to feel comfortable in the process. I was absolutely willing to walk away and let it go. I knew that I was not going to compromise because I know what I've lived through and I know what I'm not going to live through again. What you can live through at 43, you can't live through at 63. It's
Right.
different. I could do that back then. I can't do that today. So it was a beautiful process, and it's been amazing working with my team and feeling that nimble feeling again. It's scary, but it's fun.
Hey guys, this is Dream Leapers with Harriette Cole. We're talking with Lisa Price of Carol's Daughter. Have just a few minutes left, but in this time that we do, so you are on your own with a different business partner, but now you own your business again. What is in the future? What is it? What does Carol's Daughter look like today?
Today, to me, Carol's Daughter is a company that has been granted this amazing amount of grace. And in this period of grace, she's redefining herself. She is working on innovations that will come out next year. And she has an opportunity to speak with a voice that is so much more wise than she once was, and really doesn't feel the need to have to prove something. I and she get to step out and say, okay, this is what I've learned. This is something that I used to do a long time ago, but I've learned that it works better when you do it this way. And
Mhm.
then there's this science that I learned, and I stirred it all up in there, and this is what I've come up with. And what do you think? Like, let's share, let's talk about it, let's ideate. It feels more intimate, even though in a way it isn't, because it's still social media and it's still retailers and it's still thousands of doors that you have to launch these products in. But for me, it feels more intimate. I feel like I'm closer to the process. um, I'm stirring the pot, if you will, figuratively.
Mhm.
um, and I get to share again. I shared before, but I had to share through several filters.
Mhm.
I had to work with certain chemists and labs, and we would get to things together, and they were things that I loved, and things that are in my bathroom and that I use. But I got to do this one from scratch, and I
Mhm.
and I got to pull out the old recipe book and go back to something from 30 years ago, but then sit with the chemist and say, okay, how do we make this relevant right now? And that's pretty magical.
Okay,
And
so I have to ask you about some of the products because one of my all-time favorites, that sun product, is it
oh
coming back?
yes,
Is it coming back?
that is something. We are working on sun protection, but in a different way from that particular item. But I think I could see that in the line again, but it's probably going to take a couple of years
But
because
just
right
know
now,
that
yeah,
there's
focus.
some beach lovers out here who want that product.
I,
Remember.
I actually do make that, so I'm gonna have to send it to you when I make some, because there's so many people that have loved that I just make it and keep it in a cabinet in my house.
Oh,
And when
lovely.
people ask me, I send it to them.
And so, just we have a couple more minutes. What are the key products in the line now?
The key range, the number one range within the line, is the Goddess Strength range. People love that. The oil is the most popular. We have some extensions that are going to be joining that range in 2026. The second most popular one is Black Vanilla. And Black Vanilla has some new things that are coming in 26. They're going to hit in the second half of 26. Normally, in our business, launches come in January, but because last March I did a thing, it takes time to
Yes,
transition. And so product development could not be my focus right
true.
out the gate, but it has been ever since June. So we will be ready by June of 26 with some new items.
And where can people find Carol's Daughter products today?
Our website is back up and running for business again. So carolsdaughter.com is a way to shop again, but we're also in Amazon, and we are in Walmart. We're doing amazing in CVS. We're in Walgreens. We're in some food stores, but those are the major retailers that have us.
Excellent. Well, congratulations on this amazing journey, and thank you for sharing it with us. I think it's quite an education for us to hear just, the machinations of making a business work. Thank you. Thank you,
Thank
Lisa.
you. Thank you.
And thank you to all of you for tuning in. I hope you enjoyed this conversation as much as I did. Until next time, have a great day and make it count.